There are two types of people in this world: those who love beautiful organic gardens and abundant harvests, and those who are dead inside. And I'm pretty sure that you're the first type, so let's get to harvesting some vegetables. Now, as you may guess, we are in the peak of summer. Right now, at the time of recording this, it is early August, which here in Zone 10A, it is as hot as things get, and that also means it's the time when everything is popping off and there's the greatest pest pressure. What that also means, though, is that we've got an absolute mountain of tomatoes. And I want to share with you today my 4 favorite cherry tomato types, because cherry tomatoes are really kind of the easiest thing that can get you or anyone into gardening, because compared to larger tomatoes, which take a little more intentional pruning, cherry tomatoes are just easy and abundant. And granted, if they're indeterminates, they will take a little bit more work as far as pruning goes, but the abundance that they will provide is absolutely insane. And so here we've got variety 1, which are Campari tomatoes. If you've ever been to a grocery store and seen tomatoes on the vine, you have probably had a Campari tomato, because they are just incredibly easy to grow, incredibly prolific, and just really delicious and beautiful. They're kind of a halfway between cherry tomato and larger tomato variety. And I'll say that as I show you some Sungolds, the purple tomato, and the other varieties we're going to be talking about. Camparis were actually the first tomato that I ever grew. I got the seeds as a gift, and in my inexperience as a beginner gardener, I threw like 12 seeds in the hole, and then was shocked that I got 12 plants out of that one spot. Thankfully, I thinned it back, so I didn't end up messing anything up, but they are just pretty disease resistant, very easy to grow, and I would recommend them to anyone. They're not necessarily the most like revolutionary or kind of crazy tomato, but if you're looking for a nice little bruschetta, or maybe you're making a little caprese salad or something of the sort, they are delicious, they are beautiful, and they are so prolific. I normally harvest them when they just kind of start to blush a little bit, but things got away from me, and so we've got both tomatoes that are blushing and are just fully ripe and red here on the plant, which is really cool to see. But ordinarily you shouldn't do this, because generally what will happen is pests like squirrels, rats, even birds sometimes, so you'll kind of attract unwanted attention. And actually, if you look right here, we've got a little bit of pest action here on this one, so this is probably fine, but again, I'm just gonna kind of chuck this into the soil and let some other creature enjoy it, because the best part of having an abundant, thriving garden like this is that you can share. And actually, a lot of the tomatoes that I'm harvesting today will be destined for friends and family. That's pretty much all of the like super ripe ones. Obviously, pretty much everything here you can see on this plant is blushing, but I can already tell that this basket is gonna be full to the brim. So let me take you to my other Campari plant that's at the end of this row. Now, I was excited when I came out here earlier, because I think I saw one of the biggest Camparis I've ever seen. Yeah, check this out. This is kind of the perfect example of what a Campari can look like and should be. So I have relatively large hands, but that's a pretty big cherry tomato. So that's what I'm saying. They're not really cherry tomatoes. They're kind of like a halvesy. Here, we've got some pests. For some reason, I noticed that this tomato plant has had a little bit more pest damage. I posted a video a couple weeks ago on how to prune tomatoes, which you can check out here. And if you saw that video, here is where I kind of pulled off the most tomatoes that had drama. Woo, that is a big old hole. If you see that, don't eat it. This guy is nice and ripe and juicy. We may honestly just be able to fill up an entire basket of Camparis. Here at the bottom are all of the suckers that were growing low down on my plant, which I wasn't able to support. But if you chop off the top of a tomato, plop it on down, it'll finish ripening, and then you can prune off the plant. All right, that's enough of the Camparis. And now just look at all that. So beautiful. And we're moving on to the next variety. Variety number 2 is a new one for me this year, and this is the Indigo Rose. It is a anthocyanin, somewhat rich tomato. So it has a little bit of a purple pigment on the exterior, and that purple pigment is full of anthocyanins. And anthocyanins are a pigment in a wide variety of vegetables that are full of antioxidants and therefore really good for you. I will be showing you the purple tomato shortly, but this is kind of a good variety if you don't really feel like growing the purple tomato, or just like something that's pretty and delicious in your garden. I'm definitely going to run out of harvest space in this basket, so I'm combining the Camparis with the Indigo Rose, because they kind of have a similar flavor profile to me. So the Indigo Rose is very prolific. I found to be fairly disease resistant, and man, it's just a delicious tomato. I'm picking all of them when they have just a little bit of red or orange creeping through. They actually start out looking super purple, and then they have a little bit of green, and then once you see the green start to fade away, that means it's time to harvest them. We will get into it, but the reason I grow the purple tomato in my garden is because I'm in it for the nutrition and the flavor, and also I believe in science. I I've gotten to chat with the people at the Purple Tomato, or, the team behind it. They're all just a bunch of, underpaid scientists. This isn't some big corporate venture. But again, you are the one who's growing your own garden, and you can grow what you want to. And so if you don't want to get into that, there's a bunch of really beautiful anthocyanin rich-ish varieties of tomatoes out there that you can grow. And they're all part of what's called the Indigo series. And I will put the information down in the description with the background of that. But basically, they are tomatoes that have a little bit of a purple pigment in their skin. And so they do have some anthocyanin content, but they're not, purple all the way through. And when we're done harvesting and hanging out in the shade, I'll go ahead and show you a side-by-side of the Indigo rose versus the Purple Tomato. Let me chuck those in there. I did the same thing that I mentioned with the Camparis, where I had some growth I couldn't support, so I just put it down here. I think we're just about good here, so let's move on to the next variety. And now we're on to basket number 2, just in time for my favorite tomato of all time, the Sungold. I'm not being dramatic in the slightest when I say that Sungold tomatoes are the most delicious tomatoes by a country mile. Every person I know who is a supposed tomato hater, doesn't really like tomatoes, blah, 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 loves a Sungold, or at least appreciates the difference in quality between any tomato they've tried. They're sweet, they're rich, they're delicious in pretty much every application you can think of. And for home gardeners or organic gardeners growing in really any context, they are one of the best ways to differentiate the flavor of what you're able to harvest compared to what you're able to get at the grocery store. As you can see, they are also incredibly prolific. And here in my Zone 10A garden, they seem to just really love the heat. And so long as they get consistent moisture, they don't really split. As you can see, all of my tomatoes that I'm growing are along this brick wall that divides my house and the neighbors, and it gets full sun all day, every day. So even though I, grow in raised beds, in ground, and in other spaces now, this is kind of the prime spot for tomato growing, which should tell you how I feel about Sungolds based on the fact that there's about 1 billion of them right here. Now, similar to the other tomatoes, you can obviously pick these as soon as they're blushing. If they have a little bit of green, that's fine. They'll ripen by the time you actually cook them, unless you're going, full garden to table and just eating them right away, which I do quite a bit. My favorite, most recent application for Sungolds was combining them with the Purple Tomatoes and then just kind of roasting them quickly in a pan and then putting them on pizza. And wow, 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 the flavor is insane. As I said, you can also make them into a jam and use them in salads. I think a delicious summer salad is wonderfully companioned by a handful of either whole Sungold tomatoes, sliced in half Sungolds, or, however you want to eat them. As you can see, they kind of come in a wide range of sizes. This is kind of where I end up landing a lot of the time as far as size goes. If you want them to be a lot larger, you can prune back some of the growth and kind of take in some of the suckers, but I don't really care because, they're a small cherry tomato, so I just let them be a small cherry tomato. You can also see in between the Sungolds that we've got another tomato, and these are the Midnight Roma. They're also a part of the Indigo series, which I mentioned about the Indigo rose. I don't remember exactly how many there are, but they're all slightly purple in pigment and fully delicious. Now, the Midnight Roma is a larger tomato, not, Berkeley tie-dye or Purple Cherokee big, but bigger. And it's really fun, but it's hard to harvest or hard to kind of find the sweet spot for harvesting. And at least in my gardening experience, I found it to be a little bit more disease prone. So this will probably be the last year that I grow it, even though it is really pretty. And I'll probably just switch back to regular Romas, but I'll harvest a few and slice that open to show you because they are really cool, really pretty, and really delicious. But I just don't like having to fuss around with them quite as much as even large tomatoes like the Berkeley tie-dye, which is my favorite big tomato. My seeds that I'd saved just weren't great this year, so it was what it was. I don't find that pests love this one as much. I think just because they're smaller, maybe they're sweeter, who knows. Quick outfit change because I knew my shoulders were going to burn to a crisp, but now just look at all those beautiful Sungolds. Delicious. And now we have reached the final tomato that I think that everyone should be growing, and that is the infamous and delightful, in my opinion, Purple Tomato. So the Purple Tomato was developed by Norfolk Plant Sciences in the UK. It was the work of scientists trying to increase the nutrition of a very common food that people ate. And what they did is they spliced in the genes of purple snapdragons with tomatoes to create these beautiful and anthocyanin-rich purple tomatoes. Just look, it is purple all the way through. And as promised at the end, I'll show you this next to the Indigo Rose and Midnight Roma, but they are not nearly as vibrant and purple as this is. And that color isn't just for show. It also means that you're getting all of those incredible antioxidants. So from a nutritional and flavor standpoint, because these are delicious, but let's talk about, the cause for concern. A lot of people hear GMO and run for the hills, and honestly, when I first thought about growing this, that was my response too. But But then I looked into it more, I read the background of the scientists, and I even got to chat with the CEO. And this really is just the work of modern science trying to make people healthier. And without stirring the pot too much here, these kind of GMOs are wildly different from the GMOs that most of us think about or see on labels. When you think of GMOs, particularly here in the US, you're probably thinking of Roundup Ready crops, which are bred so that you can spray more pesticides on them, which then drift to other fields and just really aren't great. But these are not that type of GMO. These are just bred for nutrition. There's no pesticide increase, which all led me to want to grow them for myself. I've had people ask, do they taste super different? Do they have some special flavor? And for better or worse, no. They just taste like a really delicious, really rich tomato, and they're really pretty, whether you put it on a salad or you kind of do that thing that I was talking about where you roast them up and then put them on a pizza or something of the sort. I think that everyone should grow them, but at the same time, I don't really care if you do. If you're still really reticent to grow something that has that GMO label on it, then that is your prerogative as a gardener. And I think that's the fun part of, home organic gardening, is that you can choose what you want to grow and you don't have to grow what you don't want to grow. And in the world of organic gardening, provided, we're all supporting pollinators and not spraying our gardens with 1 million pounds of pesticides, I think everyone should be able to kind of coexist with slightly differing opinions. So that is mine. I love them and I think that you should grow them, but if you don't want to, that's totally okay. They do kind of tend to look a little bit brown when freshly harvested. That final kind of rich purple color comes, after they've been sitting or when you cut them open. I think we've got pretty much all of them off this plant. You might see there are some purple tomatoes here, but as I mentioned earlier, those are actually the Indigo rows, and when I flip them, they have a little bit of green to them, so they're not ready for harvest. But let's move on to my other plant. This is kind of a good example of how big they can get. So again, remember the size of the palm of my hand. They're a large-ish tomato, but not large, objectively speaking. So we're just gonna come and blast through, pick all these off. One thing I forgot to mention with the purple tomatoes that is a common cause for concern or complaint is the cost of the seeds and the patenting laws surrounding the growth of them. The seeds are like $20. I think that's 10 seeds if I'm remembering correctly. I bought them for myself. It was a painful purchase compared to, what you're used to paying for seeds, because most seed packets for tomatoes I think are what, like $3 or $4. But if you grow them well once, you can save seeds for yourself. Now, they are a patented seed, which maybe for people who even have no problem with the GMO thing, have a little bit of an annoyance with that. And that means that you can't, without permission, sell the seeds. You can gift it to people. But again, I just want to kind of reiterate, I've gotten to know and chat with the team, and it's just a bunch of scientists who are trying to help the world. There's no big tomato at play here. Again, I'm not telling you exactly what to do. I'm just relaying what my experience has been and where I've landed on the whole issue. Now just look at all that. Full of nutrients and full of flavor. Now that's just a bit disrespectful, but at least it can go in the compost. Now we're all done with the cherry tomatoes, so as promised, let's harvest some of these midnight Romas, and then we've also got some peppers to harvest. So don't worry, it's not just a cherry tomato day, it's a day full of other abundance as well. So these are kind of hard to tell because you need to see a little bit of red pigment to know that they are fully ripe. Sometimes a little bit of pigmentation like this is a helpful clue. They are first green and purple, and then purple and red, and once they're purple and red, then they are fully ripe. I got a little overzealous on one of the plants that's over on the other side of my garden, and here you can see, you might look here and think, wow, that's ready and ripe and purple. Boop, green, not ripe, not ready. That right there is a perfect specimen, and honestly, that's what drew me in. That's such a cool combination of colors, and flavor's really great too. Are they infinitely more delicious than a good organically grown Roma? That's debatable, but they are really cool and they are really delicious. So now we've got some purple Romas. Let's go ahead and get some other goodies. Now moving out of the world of tomatoes, we've got these Serranos right here. And these 3 Serrano plants that are growing together in this earth box are either 3 or 4 years old. I honestly can't remember. I like to let these ripen all the way to red on the plant. They are sweet, spicy, obviously a little bit smaller. If you're used to seeing bigger Serranos, these are obviously not that. These were some of the first pepper plants that I ever successfully grew, and being a capsicum annuum, they're pretty chill. And here in zone 10A, they're good at growing year round. Obviously they heavily slow down as far as production goes in the winter. You know, that is not the time even here for them to be producing fruit, but the plants still exist, and that's all the right ones today. Obviously, some of them are pretty small, but that just means you harvest more of them and use more of them. These jalapenos are all, I want to say 2 years old. I grew them last year and just kind of left them to overwinter in their containers, and they're still growing and doing well. Generally, we just kind of pick these as needed. We take them as they're green. And now our last thing to harvest today is some chamomile. I have been really behind on harvesting this, and a lot of my flowers on the few plants that I have are starting to look a little bit more like this, which is past their prime. And while, you know, that's not a huge problem to have, it does kind of start to slow down the production of flowers on the plant. So this guy has a lot of really beautiful ripe flowers, and then I'm gonna kind of come through with my pruners and cut back any dead growth. I think that they are best harvested early in the morning. We also have some strawberries here. It looks pretty good. Delightful. Here's what we got off of this plant. And now this one right here has a lot of those dead flowers that I was talking about. If I lift this up, you can see all of that. So I'm just gonna come through real quick and take the ones that are good. I use these for tea. I grew up drinking chamomile. For those who are as nerdy as I am, this is all Roman chamomile, so not German chamomile. It is a perennial, also full of medicinal benefits. It is my favorite smell in the garden. When you rub the leaves like this, it has this kind of bubble gummy aroma. And while I've tested and tried to see if that flavor makes its way into, you know, a tea made from these flowers, whether fresh or dried, sadly it doesn't, or it doesn't to the same degree as it smells. So it's just kind of a nice little treat in the garden. Here's what we got. A few chamomile flowers. It'll make a nice cup of tea when dried. And once I cut this all back, we'll have 10x what's in here right now. And speaking of medicinal things, I have a ton of this yarrow that I did some seed saving for. I'll link that video right here, but I didn't cut back the plants as aggressively as I could because I wanted to experiment with finally making some yarrow tea out of the leaves. So I cut off the dead flower heads, and then I'm going to save all of these stems. A big part of herbalism is experimentation, and there's no one better to experiment on than yourself. So I'm going to dry it out and then kind of see how it works as a digestive tea after dinner, and then I'll give it to my wife if it works out well, where she honestly needs the help a little bit more than I do. And if she sees this, I am sorry, but it is the truth. And now, I mean, just look at all this. Absolute abundance, for which I am incredibly grateful. And as promised, let me show you the difference between the inside of a midnight Roma, a good purple tomato, and then an indigo rose that's nice and fully ripe. First, I'll show you the indigo rose because it's just a nice, beautiful red tomato on the inside. Take a look at that. So delicious, especially harvested fresh from the vine like that. Then let me show you a midnight Roma. Beautiful, delicious red color on the inside. Also wonderful, really lovely. And then finally, I've got to show you the purple tomato. Just look at that color. That's absolutely insane. Side by side with the indigo rose, there is no comparison. Sure, on the outside, there might be a little bit of purple, but on the inside, the purple tomato reigns supreme. Wow, sensational. As you may have guessed, the heat of the day is now in full swing, which means we are done harvesting. But I want to thank you so much for watching this video and spending this time harvesting with me. As always, it helps out a ton if you both like and subscribe to the channel. And let me know which of these varieties seems most interesting to you and which one you want to grow in your garden. This has been Aaron, aka Garden Zaddy, and I'll see you on the next one.